Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Bikes for Death podcast. As always, my name is Patrick, and I'm your host. And on today's episode, I'm excited to bring you a chat between me and Nicolette Jones, who is this year's female winner of the Colorado Trail Race. I had an absolute blast getting to know Nicolette. This was her first ever bikepacking race, and she doesn't have social media. And so I didn't know Nicolette at all. I knew nothing about her, but I got to know her through her blog while researching for this episode and found out that she is a very adventurous person. She's done a lot of really cool trips, including a cool job in the adventure guiding and coaching industry. And I think you're going to really like this chat. I know that I did. We covered a wide range of topics, from making your own bags to tandems and a tandem tour that she went on with her husband, Mark, from Arizona to Argentina. And one thing that really impressed me was all the different ways that she has traversed the Colorado Trail. But I'll leave that for today's episode so you have something to look forward to. And before we get to our chat, let's take a moment to thank the people that made it possible, starting with our latest batch of patrons. Unfortunately, we didn't have any this week, but that's okay. We appreciate all of our current patrons, everybody who supports the show. And if you enjoyed these episodes and you would like to support the podcast, a great way to do that is through Patreon. And you can find more over at patreon.com/bikesfordeath. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I've got Andrew from Livesyn here. And Andrew, last time you were on, we talked a little bit about the brand, a little bit about your story. And after you left, I started to wonder about your name, Livesyn. I'm curious, what does it mean and kind of what's the story behind Livesyn?
Yeah, it's if any of your listeners have ever tried to name a brand or a business or even a product, they know that that's a very hard process and that everything you could possibly think of has probably been taken. And
So
so
true.
while I was building Libsyn at the very beginning, I was putting down our principles and our values and designing our products, but just couldn't. I even had the logo, didn't. The name was just hard to come to. And so I happened upon this word, a Swedish word, livsnutare. It's not exactly how you say it, right? But it's easier to understand that where the root comes from if I say it that way. And it means one who lives life fully, one who lives
Mm.
life to the extreme, someone who seeks experiences and the juice of life. And I explained to you a little bit about what we stand for, which is to own, less stuff and better stuff and go out there and live a well-worn life. And when I found this word, it really coalesced and started the brand off in real life, in real time. It became this object, this person who we were designing for. Because if you want to go live this experience-filled life, if you want to end up with a well-worn life, then you need really good quality clothing to get you there. And so
Yeah.
Livesyn came from that. And, back in the entrepreneurial kind of mindset, when you make up a word essentially or take part of one, it happens to be available and no one's done it before. And I love it aesthetically. It's balanced visually. The N and the L kind of balance each other out. It's 5 letters and it rolls off your tongue in a really neat way. And I think it's got that perfect blend of, you can say it, but it takes a little bit of practice. And a lot of my favorite brands, I probably mispronounced at the beginning of my relationship with that brand. And then I felt somewhat of an insider later when I finally figured it out.
Yeah. I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, I love the name, and I was curious what it meant, and I knew it had to stand for something, and so I was curious. So thanks for filling me in. And I think y'all have a sale going on coming up soon. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The 29th, I believe, through the 2nd of September, so right around Labor Day. We're doing a Labor Day sale on our Sunset collection. We're doing an extra 20% off. And then we're also doing 20% off our treat store, if you go to our website, which is our lived-in gear, used gear, repaired stuff. Some of our returned clothing is on there, but also some of our customers are able to go list some pre-loved lives in pants and jackets. and sell them to other people. So we're doing a sale across our Sunset collection, which is products that are being phased out or have been version improved over the years. And then also on our used and resale channel all the way through September 29th to the 2nd.
That's so cool. The Sunset collection, that's such a clever category. Well done. And dear listener, Livesend has an exclusive discount code just for you for being a loyal listener to this podcast. So if you would like to take an additional 10% off your order, use code BOD10 at checkout and watch those dollar signs disappear. Thanks for coming on the podcast today, Andrew.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right, everybody. Well, today on the podcast, I got Shane Hitz from the Red Granite Grinder to talk about, well, a couple of events. We're going to be discussing a couple of events that you're promoting there in the area. Shane, welcome back on the podcast. You've been on before. We did an episode together, so welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Patrick.
And I think it's worth mentioning right off the top that you and I did record a podcast about the Red Granite Grinder that we're going to be talking about today. So for anybody who's interested in learning even more information, you can go back in the archives and find that one. But for people who aren't familiar, Shane, what is the Red Granite Grinder?
So it's a gravel adventure race. So with the emphasis on adventure, because we use a lot of private land sections that go off of the gravel roads. So we have 15 landowners altogether that we have to get permission from to go on this route, and those are only available on race day, which makes this race a very unique race. So lengths of the courses, we have a 12-mile kids race, we have a 50-mile, we have an 85-mile, and we have a 144-mile. One of the unique sections on that course is a corn maze that's available on the 50-mile race. So that is a pretty unique section that everybody loves, and people embrace that stuff.
Yeah, man. You got a little bit of everything for everyone. And one of the coolest things about that course is how you worked with all the different landowners. So this really is like a one-time chance to ride this route at this time. So yeah, when is it, and where can people go to register for that event?
So the Red Granite Grinder takes place on Saturday, October 12th. And on Friday, we have registration, which we also have a bunch of stuff going on. We have live music. We have a women's skills clinic, which we're big on because we want to attract a lot more women into this race. And we have group ride for everybody to go on. And then the week leading up to the race, we have a lot of group rides that I just like kind of pop up on the Iron Bowl Facebook page.
Very cool. Very cool. But wait, there's more. If you get a taste of gravel and you want a little bit more in the Wisconsin area, Shane, I know that you're very well known for your bikepacking and especially like your route building. And you have a new event, a bikepacking summit. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the bikepacking summit was first time we had it was last year. So it's a couple of different or 3 different routes that I offer on that. And it's a 75-mile overnighter loop, 225-mile. We recommend like 3 to 4 days on that one. And then a 365-mile, which is like a 5 to 7 day loop. Registration for that is also on the ironbowl.org website page. You can register there, and the event actually starts on a Thursday night, and then they get Thursday night camping and Friday night camping. And we charge $60 for that, and $5 of that goes towards planting trees in Langley County.
Very cool, Shane. Well, for anyone who hasn't been in that area before, I can tell you it is absolutely beautiful. It's a beautiful place to ride. So I'll put all the information on how to find out more and how to register in the show notes. Thanks for coming on, Shane. Good to see you.
Thanks, Patrick. Good to see you too.
All right, bye-bye. All right. Ching, 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 ching. The bills have been paid, and now it is time to get to my chat with Nicolette Jones. But before we get to it, let's have my friend Miles Arbor kick it off with the Bikes Are Death theme song.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends, or you could be alone. You ride for a day, or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa shit to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes or death. Bikes or death. Podcast.
Nicolette Jones, welcome to the podcast and congratulations on winning the Colorado Trail Race this year.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick.
Absolutely. Do you go by Nicolette? I saw on you have a blog and you sign it Nick, and so I was curious how you introduce yourself to people.
Yeah, usually when I'm working and working outside, I introduce myself as Nick. Just keep it easy at one syllable, but Nick or Nicolette is fine.
Okay. Well, Nicolette, you're in Carbondale, Colorado, is that right?
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
How long have you been there?
This is my first summer here. I was living over in the Arkansas River Valley. So I was in Leadville in the winter and Salida in the summer for quite a few years, or for 3 or 4 years. And yeah, my husband has worked over here in Aspen for eight seasons, 8 years more or less. And we just decided we wanted to live in the same place this time around. So
y'all been married and not living together?
No, we got married in September, but we've been together for about 6 years. So we got married in September, and then we bike toured this winter, and then when we came back, we started paying rent, living in the same spot. So
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's nice to be in the same spot for sure. Yeah, when you said you lived in Carbondale, I was like, I've been to Carbondale before, and I thought it was for a bikepacking trip, and so I went back in my Strava files and I found it, and it was actually one of my first bikepacking trips. Well, it was early on in my bikepacking career, quote unquote career, but it was definitely my first out-of-state bikepacking trip. I did a 60-mile loop overnighter on hard Scrabble Mountain. I'm curious if you ride out there.
I can't think where that is right off the top of my head. Is that?
I think it's east of you.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely some trail systems out there that we ride. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that area super super well, I don't think, around hard Scrabble, but there's definitely, this is just one of the most incredible places to be for mountain bike access. There's just so much trail in this valley, and there's such a big mountain bike community.
Yeah.
And then if you're into gravel biking or bike packing, it's just crazy all the stuff you can link up here.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm so jealous. I'm in Texas, the land of no public lands and no infrastructure and no nothing. So I get jealous of places that are littered with outdoor recreation opportunities. So that's got to be sweet. That trip at Hardscrabble was memorable for me because it's the first and only time I've really had real severe altitude sickness, and
Okay.
I fought through it, and I thought I was gonna have to cancel the ride, but ended up pulling through. I actually got that tattoo.
Oh, nice.
Was from the top of Hardscrabble Mountain. We camped up there at 11,200 feet, and I had altitude sickness, and I was just I was in a bad spot, but I took a picture from my hammock, and when I was had my altitude sickness, I was laying there in the hammock thinking I'm dying. Not really, I'm exaggerating, but I took a photo. And anyway, that's the artistic representation of that photo that I took at the top of Hardscrabble Mountain. And absolutely, it was beautiful. I got to give a shout out to Jeff Kirkove. Do you know him?
Kirkove. Yeah, I know him through kind of Strava and my husband and Strava comments.
Yeah.
And yeah, he does a lot of really awesome rides. So I spend a fair bit of time looking at his Strava to get inspired.
Yeah, he straight up put this route together for us, and it was a great route. And now I can say I've had altitude sickness, so it was a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I just looked up where that is, and that's definitely a pretty rugged area back there. I've not spent very much time back in that area, but that's a really cool spot.
Well, I can definitely recommend it. I don't know how it compares to other riding out there, but I was blown away. I will never forget the descent coming off of hard scrabble on the second day. I mean, it was like 10 miles or 13-mile descent, and like, you have to, from my perspective as a Texan, we're like, I'm living at 278 feet and, we go up to like 300, it's like flat. So just the idea of like a 10+ mile descent is like mind blowing. And it was like perfectly flowy and graded, it's just like
Oh,
one of
wow.
those
Yeah.
epic descents that's like, you just grip it and smile for miles. So anyway, I'll never forget that. It's a beautiful one. But yeah, shout out goes to Jeff Kirkovey. Kirkovey, is that what you said?
Yeah.
For that one. So let's get to know you a little bit. What do you do for work? It sounds like you have kind of a adventurous job. What do you do?
This summer I was working as a mountain bike coach. So yeah, there's a big bike community here. I just do like cross country mountain bike coaching, and I was doing like mostly kids programming, like day camps this summer, and then we have some adult clinics. Right now, I'm helping coach the high school mountain bike team here, and then we have some other like after school programming, and then picking up some other like part-time work this fall. And then I'm usually a ski instructor in the winter. And then this is my first year mountain bike coaching. In the past, I've been a raft guide in the summer.
Wow.
And kind of part of it, like, switch this summer, moving here, I was ready to take a break from raft guiding and like really be able to spend more time on the bike was the big goal. Um, but yeah, so that's where I've been at for work.
Well, you've come to the right podcast. Although I love river trips. That's probably my second favorite modality of way to travel is river trips. I just love it. Have you done any bike rafting yet?
I haven't. Putting my bike on the back of a raft is always a little bit, anything like bike, like mixing the bike in the water, is a little bit intimidating just from a maintenance and mechanical perspective. So
Yeah.
I haven't started stringing those ones together. Mostly when I private boat, I'm like a hard boat kayaker. Like my husband and I both have kayaks, and yeah, it's a lot harder to squeeze the bike into the back of one of those.
Yeah, for sure. It would be cool I bet you could get like a mount, like a fork mount, and like figure out a way if you had like a long canoe. I've thought about that before. I think that would be really cool to do
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it's pretty fun to link them together, but it's also a pain in the butt. But it's like it's just neat to be able to combine those two disciplines of like, you ride for a while and you hop in the water and then you put your boat back on your bike and you keep going. Like just I don't know, I just love the human powered aspect of being able to traverse land and water in that way. It's a lot of fun, but it can wreak havoc on your gear for sure.
Yeah, it's
I
probably hard on both ends.
I don't do much. I think I think I did like class 2 was the biggest, so not taking on anything too gnarly. How do you get into like all the adventure outdoor guiding and ski instructing, and like how do you get into that kind of stuff? Do you need like certain qualifications, or how do you even get started?
Yeah, I mean, this is not something I saw myself going into. Growing up, I didn't like grow up skiing or mountain biking. I grew up playing soccer. It was like my big sport. Like I ran and stuff too, but I went to a little school in southern Colorado to play soccer, and that was where like I learned to ski and bike, and like everybody climbs in college. Um, and so like I think one is you just have to be introduced to like that this is a possibility, is the biggest thing. And then there's a lot of privilege in it, is really like it's a lot easier to get into if you can spend your first year or two not making very much money. So like I was really lucky. I didn't have any student debt. Um, and I don't have like a ton of expenses, and like my family is stable, so I'm not like responsible to them financially. And obviously like they've helped me out a lot. Like my parents paid for my college. Um, and like, bought my car. And so I just don't have a lot of like expenses. And so like my first year ski instructing, I was like right out of college and I was able to just find a cheap place to live. And like I had friends that were living in Leadville and I didn't have any certifications. Like I'd been skiing for, I think I had one full season under my belt at that point. But it's like if you
No.
want to be a kid ski instructor and you show up and you want to do it, like that's usually enough to like get you working and get you started. And then from there, as you want to progress, there's like all sorts of certification bodies that you can pay lots of money to get like a nice piece of paper that says that you're like a level one or a level two or a level three. Um, and then yeah, like I think raft guiding is like even worse for that. I think that was like one of the reasons I left is just because like the the pay structure there and like kind of the pecking order, at least for like the type of guiding I was doing. It's a little different in different places, but it's like if you show up your rookie year, like the expectation is that you're available to work like 7 days a week, whether or not there's work, and you're like showing up every day, like ready to work, and doing a lot of like basically unpaid labor. And if like your boat doesn't go out, then you're not getting paid, or if your like trip doesn't go out, like you're just helping everybody else get out. And I was really lucky my first year guiding. There was like a ton of work. That was like 2021. And so it was like the post-COVID outdoor rec boom. And I
Yeah.
was actually able to make some money, but it's like um I was just living on property that year. I just had a one-person tent that I like camped out in all
Oh,
summer.
wow.
And they like the company I worked for provides space for us to camp. And then the next 2 years I was there, they built like this little like shed. It's like this 8x8 shed that they affectionately called the tiny house, but it was just like four walls and a roof. And I was like the only returning female guide that second year, and so they gave me that spot. Um, but yeah, definitely as far as like what does it really take? Yeah, like yeah, there are tons of certifications you can get, and if you have the money to like pay for those certifications, that helps a lot. Um, but really, like, yeah, it takes a certain amount of like wherewithal to just like being in a community or an environment to know that it's a possibility to work these jobs and then to know other people who have made it work. So like, kind of whatever means you have, um, you can make it work.
That river rafting, like the guiding service, it's always seemed to me like, and it's sounding like your experience as well. It's like very like feral and kind of like dirt bag, like you're living in a tent, you're just scraping by, nothing luxurious, behind the scenes. Is that kind of how it is?
Yeah, I would say that's fair, like pretty accurate assessment. I like to tell people that any of the stereotypes that you've heard about raft guides are true. Um, so, I like one of the things that I really loved about guiding was the people I worked with. Like other people who are willing to be out there and live like that and be on the river every day. You meet a lot of like really great people. But it's a challenging environment too. Yeah, and I think feral is a good way to describe it. Um, but yeah, I'd say
I've
that's a fair
always
assessment.
I've always, yeah, held them in high regard, especially like, I don't know, I just the experiences that I've had with like river guides and stuff. I mean, it seems like they're all in, like they're living it, eating it, breathing it, sleeping it. It seems like it's like they're hardcore about it, and I can respect that. That's cool.
Totally. And I think that was kind of one of the reasons like I saw the guides who I had trained with and like the amount of time that they were putting into it and kind of what they were doing in the off season versus what I was doing is like our season here kind of ended mid-August usually, and like mid-August I was so ready to be dry and ride my bike. Um and they were like okay, like figuring out how they were going to get out east for like golly season.
Yeah.
And they're putting in like February's or like early season on the Salt River. There's like a river in Arizona that runs like March and April, basically. And so you can go up and do like early season boating or early season guiding. And like I just don't have that kind of passion for the river where it's like it's not something that I can do year round. Um, I'm like way more passionate about skiing and mountain biking. And yeah, so I think what you described as people being like all in on it is definitely like there are people out there that's everything for them. So
Yeah. As part of that job, like your decision to, hold these different kind of seasonal type adventure guiding type jobs, is part of that a decision, like a conscious decision to want to leave other time for your own adventures? Because I've been Googling you. I've actually just been reading on your blog, and you do a lot of stuff. You're busy. You do a lot of stuff. So, is that like a conscious decision to allow time for that?
yeah, definitely. I think when I first started, I guess I kind of always knew that would be part of it. Is when I graduated from college in like winter of 2019. So I got out just before all the like COVID craziness. And I decided I was gonna hike the Continental Divide Trail, and so that was part of the reason that I chose to ski instruct, was I knew it would be seasonal, and then I could like have the summer off. And then since then, it's like, oh, there's always like another thing I want to do. Yeah, and again, that's kind of another privilege that like I definitely have, is like being able to take that time off. But finding jobs where that works is having those like big shoulder seasons. Or like, yeah, just being able to take a whole season off too is way easier when you're doing seasonal work than like if you have a year-round job. Obviously, like taking a 7-month sabbatical or like 6 months off a year is a little bit less achievable.
Yeah, you're in the sweet spot right now. So your blog is called walkskibike.com for anyone else who wants to nerd out on your adventures.
Yeah, I think it's walk, ski, cycle.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, walkskicycle.com. My bad. And then you also paddle, like you do a lot of stuff, which I think is really cool. Hey,
Sorry.
Is that Mark?
Yeah, this is Mark.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Do we have an audience?
I think so. Are you down here? Okay. Yeah, we do.
He can hop in and let us know. Maybe we'll have him ask or answer some questions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Walkski, where was I going? Oh, I wanted to know if you'd, have you always been an adventurous person? Like, did you grow up in a real outdoorsy, adventurous family, or how'd you find your way to all these, like, outdoor adventure sports?
I think I grew up with like some sense of outdoor adventure. When my brothers and I have 2 brothers, and when we were young, my parents took us like just car camping and a little bit of hiking, but we all played like organized sports. I played soccer from like the time I was like 4. I mean, what is 4-year-old soccer really? But I was out there running around with the ball, and that like all through college, until my junior year of college, that was really the thing that I was probably the most passionate about. And just there's like not a ton of time for outdoor recs in kind of like that youth soccer schedule. And so I was running, and like it would be like a couple hikes a year was kind of my exposure to that. I went skiing a couple times and thought it was the coolest thing ever, but I was so bad at it. I think before I had my first real ski season, I had skied like 10 times. And so, it was enough that I could like make it down the hill. But that was kind of my, I guess, exposure to outdoor rec, was hiking and like car camping trips, which I like always really valued that time. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I didn't grow up like explicitly like mountain biking and skiing and backpacking very much. I went on my first backpacking trip after my senior year of high school. And then when I was in college, and really once I stopped playing soccer, it was like all of a sudden I had all this time that had been filled by like soccer and organized sports before. And that's when like I bought my first mountain bike. That was like the winter where I like just was able to ski like 50 days that winter, which like, when you're working or in school is a lot. And that's what really like got me into the adventure sports. And then just like I think the more you get involved, you realize like there are so many more possibilities. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't even know through hiking was a thing until maybe like the year before I went on my first through hike. And then it's like you go on a through hike and you meet these people who are doing like all of these other things.
Right.
And really, like I got really lucky with the university I went to is like a pretty small college. It's like is less than 2,000 people. Um, and at the time I was there, they had a really strong outdoor program. They were able to get some like pretty good funding. They had a couple really good instructors who'd actually come over from Texas Tech, which has
Oh,
like kind of like a nationally renowned outdoor program. And they were really like working hard to make it happen there. And now I'm like still really good friends with those people. And they just like took the time to like, take me whitewater kayaking and like backpacking. And I worked for the adventure program. And that was really where I was able to like learn some of the like baseline hard skills for being able to do some of these other things.
okay.
And then just like have the community of people who's like there to say like, yeah, you can definitely go out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
walk across the country or like ride your bike through Colorado or like, do all these other things that I think like I just never thought about before that.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think at some point, I think anyone who's doing this kind of stuff meets someone or hears about something and you're like, oh, wait, you can do what? And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, and it just changes your whole like kind of worldview. It just opens up the whole world in a different way. It's interesting that you mentioned Texas Tech. I don't know if you know of Jared Foster, but he's a professor there. I'm trying to remember. He has some weird. I don't know. I never went to college, so I don't know what all the professors are. But he's like a professor of practice or something like that. But he introduced a class that incorporates bike packing into it at Texas Tech.
Oh, cool.
And I've been able to go on 2 or 3 of the trips with his students where he takes 16 students every year to do a bike packing trip in different parts. So we've done Big Bend, we did New Mexico, but he takes them somewhere new every single year, and it's really cool. I got to see that firsthand. People who had never been camping before, people who had never ridden a bike before, who are introduced in a college course and a curriculum and
Yeah.
really like bolstered up by people that know what they're doing, being educated about it, and just opening your mind, be like, yeah, this is an opportunity. So I love that we're doing that in colleges. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, my grandma's favorite joke is that I majored in recess, but yeah, in my most recent birthday card, she said, "Well, at least you're putting it to use."
Yeah, touche, touche. You're doing quite well with it all and enjoying life, I'd assume. I mean, like you are living life, you are experiencing it. So, yeah, I don't think you put a price tag on that in my book. Do you have a do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite discipline or modality for outdoor recreation, or do you just like to do different things and keep it I don't know, just like mix it up?
The top two are definitely skiing and mountain biking. And I think right now it's just whichever one of those that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Uh,
You're like, "Oh, this is my favorite." No, this is my favorite.
yeah, exactly. But those two have definitely, yeah, I think are just the most fun. Um, let's see. Last year I bike packed to the Colorado Trail just as like a tour,
Right.
and I'd already traveled it several times at that point. And getting on the bike on the trail, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier. It's so much
Right.
more fun. And like just being able to go further on the bike compared to hiking and still have like the bike packing experience, or like the through travel experience has been,
Yeah.
yeah, really, really incredible. And then I don't know, skiing is just
Sure.
like it's I feel like as close as we get to, or as close as I get to flying is like skiing downhill and like being in the backcountry in the winter environment is just such a unique experience. Um, I think that's like really appealing too. But I definitely really value like sunshine and the long summer days. So I don't know
Yeah.
if I could only ski, um, or only bike, but I feel pretty lucky to be able to do both those.
Yeah, that's very well balanced. You have a favorite activity when the weather's good and the sun's shining, and you have a favorite activity whenever it's snowing out. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the best case scenario. I'm curious to get your, insights as a through hiker and also a bike packer who's have you through hiked this? You've hiked the Colorado Trail as well. I remember that
Mhm.
from studying up on you. Um, what we always talk about is like the nice thing about a bike is you get to travel further distances, but you're still going at a slow enough rate of speed that you're actually, you're still immersed in the environment. You still get to enjoy all the sights and the sounds and everything. As a person who's done a lot of both, do you agree with that? Do you think you're missing anything on a bike, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that statement generally. And I think the thing that I miss on the bike the most is that when you're through hiking, there are these like stretches of like, you know, I think the longest food carry I did when I was doing the CDT, the Continental Divide Trail, was 9 days. Um, in between like any town services. And it's really hard to do that on the bike. I mean, you can always go slower. Um,
Yeah,
but that when you're through hiking is that there's way more of a sense that you're just kind of like out there. And it's a little bit more simple is like, planning where to sleep. If you just have like 25 miles of wilderness ahead of you is like no big deal. You'll just pull over when you get tired versus like, okay, if you have 100 miles of like flat highway ahead of you, like if you get tired, you probably are going to keep riding because it's not very much
yeah,
fun to camp on um the side of the road. I mean, you end up doing a lot of that bike packing, but definitely kind of the romantic ideal of through travel, I think is a little bit more alive on foot of just like being out there, um, and being able to like stop and go at a whim versus on the bike. I think you don't have to do as much front end planning on the bike because you're like, oh,
yeah,
I know, like I can get to a food every 2 days and like a town every like however many days. But there's way more like day to day planning on the bike versus hiking. I usually do a lot more front end planning. But then when you're out there, like all that planning's done and you're just like good to go. So,
yeah.
and then of course, like just being able to travel through wilderness areas is
Yeah,
super special on foot.
yeah.
Um,
That's a big nod towards hiking.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But all of that being said is you don't get the fun of riding your bike when you're traveling on foot.
Yeah, you don't get those downhills. You don't get those sweet, sweet downhills. Well, you
Yeah.
do, but they're a little sweeter on a bike, I think.
Yeah, yeah, they can be kind of painful on foot sometimes.
Yeah. And on the inverse side, hiking your bike up a hiking trail is
Oh
not
yeah.
fun. It's like, you're like, what am I doing? This is all wrong, but there's something kind of fun about the insanity of it.
For sure.
What was your first bike packing trip?
Um, when I got the current bike that I have, I took it down to New Mexico. My parents still live in Albuquerque, and I rode from Albuquerque to Las Cruces on a little like bike packing route, like an off-road route there. And I can't remember how many miles that was. I want to say it was like 300-ish.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, I think that's right. It might have been a little bit less than that. But it's kind of like a mix of gravel paved and then some just like back country like 4x4 roads in southern New Mexico. So I rode down to Las Cruces and then rode like halfway back, and my parents came and met me, and we like car camped, and then um, they took me back to Albuquerque so I could spend a little bit more time with them.
Oh, wow. How'd that first trip go?
Um, Pretty good. It was definitely like there was uh a pretty full range of bike packing experiences. So this is like an established like route on bikepacking.com. So,
Okay.
established to whatever degree is like a couple guys have gone out there and ridden like up
You
the
know
coast.
it goes through.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was like the year after there'd been some really big fires down there, and there was I can't remember the name of the drainage there, but it had gotten like totally washed out, and I didn't know that going into it. And so I got to the top of like one of the bigger climbs for this route, and there was a road closed sign, but it's just like a little dirt road. And so I just assumed that just meant road closed for like cars and I would be fine. And initially it was like a little bit washed out, but not too bad. And I started riding down, and I was expecting just like 8 miles of like cruiser downhill. And then I got to a point where the road was just like totally washed out. It was like I was like hiking my bike through this uh like the rut of the creek is like now running through. There were like, huge culverts that had just been like totally torn out because there had been a wildfire and then big rains. And so, what I was expecting to be like a 30-minute descent was like this, I don't know, two hour hike a bike um
Yeah.
down this kind of like mess of a road. And then it was like a really wet year, so I was like, it wasn't raining on me, but just like some of these dirt roads were just like filled with these like, it was be maybe every like half mile would be like a 2 foot puddle that was just like road wide. Um, and so then on the way back, I was like, okay, well, I can't ride through that again. I'm not gonna hike my bike up all that. And I was like, oh, I think I found a route that works. You spend like all these hours looking at Google satellite images and trying to like figure out where it goes best. And then sure enough, I like get on the dirt road that I thought was going to take me where I want to go, and it like just petered out. It did not exist. It was just like the kind of like desert sagebrush out there like for miles. And I was like, oh, I could probably push my bike through this for like a couple miles and get to where on Google Photos or on Google Images it seems like the road picks back up. But I was like, but I don't really know how long that's gonna take. Like I only have so much water. And so I ended up turning back around and riding on I-25 for like um a mile and a half. Like there's just no other roads in that area. And it's like riding on the interstate is not the most fun, but it's not the
Yeah.
worst. But it's getting onto the interstate. There was no like on ramp there. So I was like, I had to like climb over like 3 barbed wire fences and then like ride uphill on the interstate for a mile and a half. So all that to say, like some kind of classic bike packing misadventures, it's like um not quite as romantic as you like, but then like all the good parts about bike packing too is like um some like really neat little campsites, and then like riding into truth or consequences. It's like you like classic stop and like get a beer and like people are talking to you and somebody offers you a place to stay. And so I ended up like just staying with some people in truth or consequences when I rode through there. And then I guess I don't know if I mentioned the destination Las Cruces. I had a good friend who is in grad school down there. So when I
Yeah.
got there, I like stayed with them for a couple days, and I was able to spend some time with her and her partner.
Nice. Yeah, that's a proper adventure right off the bat. I'm curious. I mean, you have a pretty good arsenal of experiences in the outdoor space. Like when things are going wrong, I don't know, do you like, oh, just lean into the adventure of it? Were you like scared or worried at all? Or is it just part of, yeah, do you just kind of take it in stride?
I mean, the goal is to take it in stride. Uh, yeah, it depends on the day. There's definitely like I've spent a lot of time, or like I've done a fair number of these trips solo. And like the past couple years, something I've been really working on is just having more positive self-talk, because there were definitely times when I first started doing this where it was just like total freak out tantrum all alone in the woods, like crying, and like cursing because I can't find my spoon. Um, and um, like the last couple of years, it's made a really big difference just shifting that self-talk to be a little bit more positive, um or a lot more positive, and like having those conversations with myself in like a way that's a little bit more productive. So yeah, the goal is to take it in stride. I think, yeah, there's always like worry and anxiety and like second guessing, especially, when you're out there, there's just like so many decisions to be made day to
True.
day. And it's so easy to like second guess all those decisions or wonder like, if you'd gone this way instead of that, or like gotten water here instead of there, if like things would be different. And so trying to let go of some of that like second guessing and like obviously all of that, the goal is not just to have a better bike ride, but to bring it back here and keep practicing that in my day-to-day life and in my relationship with other people.
I love that. That's so good. I wanted to ask you about something kind of fun. Do you make all your own bags?
Yeah.
That is so cool. And they look
Thanks.
great. They look great too. How did you get into making bags? Just something you wanted to like try?
I hadn't thought much about it really until when before I started the CDT, I had like just a really serendipitous string of events where I actually ended up like moving in to this house that was owned by two people who were like Triple Crown thru-hikers in Leadville. And I like learned a lot from them. And, I was already in the process of preparing for the CDT at this point. And they were like, have you ever heard of this guy, Ray Jardine? And at this point, like, he like his writing, his and his wife's writing has like shaped a lot of kind of my like ethos in a lot of these adventures. Have you heard of him?
Are you saying writing or writing?
Uh, one more time.
His
Oh, his
writing
writing,
or
like writing, like
yeah,
written.
that's what
Um,
I no, I don't think I have heard of him or familiar with his writing.
yeah, so he was a big rock climber kind of in the um I don't know, Yosemite era, like rock climbing is like getting big. He helped invent the cam. And
Okay.
then he's
I'm sure
had
I've
like,
heard of this guy. There's no way I
yeah,
haven't.
he's had some impressive like kind of phases of life. He and his wife got really into through hiking and he like pioneered ultralight through hiking is like before him, like sub 10-pound base weights were just not a thing. He was like doing the PCT in kind of like the 70s, I think is when they started through hiking. And now he's like really into motorcycle touring and long distance motorbiking, but he makes all of his own gear and he like writes books on how to make your own gear on like kind of this like uh ultralight like ethic for lack of a better word. And he and his wife actually have a little business where they sell kits to make your own gear. So they
Oh,
like sell stuff. So my the first piece of gear I sewed was like just a flat tarp for like camping underneath, and I bought like one of their kits. And one of our friends, like yeah, one of Mark's parents' friends gave us a sewing machine, and so I used that. Or actually, that first one I think I used my mom's sewing machine, and then later a friend gave us a sewing machine, and then we bought one on Craigslist. And so that was like the first time when I was like, oh, you can like make your own gear, and there's like a whole list of reasons to do it. Um, Not always because it's going to be better. But yeah, and then it
what
is
are
a
some of those
pretty
reasons?
um a big one is because it's lighter and simpler. Is
Okay.
like so much store-bought gear is really overbuilt. And then, you know, um mm, I think the biggest one is it kind of like depends what you want out of the experience. I guess one major reason to do it is for the experience of doing it, is
Okay.
that like it's kind of this idea of spending your time and not your money, is that when you're paying for gear, you're not just paying for like the tarp, right? You're paying for all the marketing that goes into that tarp and for
Yeah.
them to tell you that that tarp is so great.
Yeah.
um and
You pay people like me to talk about it on their podcast so other people will buy it. That's you're paying for
yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. And so having the experience of being removed from that is really invaluable. And then just being out there with your own gear is like,
Very
uh,
satisfying, probably.
yeah, pretty satisfying. And
And it's
then,
even more solo self-supported, right? Like you're building your own gear, not all of it obviously, but some of it, you know? You're like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's you can make the argument people who buy, if you're buying your gear, you're spending the time to make the money to then spend the money. Like it all comes
right.
back around. But yeah, it's definitely like a worthwhile experience just in itself. And then having it be a little bit more customizable. For biking, it's definitely way more lightweight. Is like the bags I make are probably, I mean, they're just not as durable as like bags that you would buy from a bag maker. As I make like just single walled, like pretty much as light as I can. But I probably save like, I don't know, depending on the biker, like 3 to 8 pounds in just bags.
Wow.
Because like the bike bags are just so heavy.
So is a thought there that, if you do have a failure, you can just repair it yourself or make yourself a new one. Like you don't need it to be as durable because you're not needing it to last for 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
How hard is it? Let's take a frame bag, for example. Like, how hard is it for anyone out there that's thinking, hey, I might want to give it a shot? Like, how hard is it to actually make a frame bag, and about how long does it take to make one?
Dude, frame bags are pretty easy, actually. I would definitely
Okay.
recommend that as a good starter project.
Oh,
The hardest part for me for frame bags is the zippers are always a little bit finicky, but frame bags are mostly like straight lines, straight seams. You just like go slow and are patient. And then, of course, it's easier the more you've done. So frame bags, I've sewed quite a few of. So those are like right now, if I were to sit down and make a frame bag, like if somebody had cut me out a template, or for the inside of their frame, it would probably like cutting fabric and everything take like 5 hours um to just make one that like I don't have like cut out, or like if I still need to take some measurements on. um but like for my bike, I think that frame bag I probably made in like just a couple hours.
wow. That's amazing. I thought it was going to take like a lot longer. I don't know how to sew. I mean, I've learned in the Boy Scouts a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't claim that I know how to sew, but it sounds fun to try. But it also, to me, it sounds like kind of like a big project. But you're making it seem a lot more obtainable than I would have thought. Just need a sewing machine, and yeah, you have to like learn. Where did you learn how to make a frame bag? There's probably instructions and stuff online.
Yeah, I read a lot about it beforehand.
You're not the
um
only one with a visitor. Hey,
yeah,
Lena.
it's awesome. But
Sorry.
yeah, there's tons of info online like that.
Yeah.
When I started making frame bags, I definitely yeah, just read a bunch of different articles. There's a couple as kind of this like DIY gear scene has become more popular. There's a couple of websites and companies that have been putting out more content, and it's a little bit more accessible now.
Yeah. I wanted to write down, what was that guy's name? The kind of grandfather or godfather or whatever of the
Yeah,
ultralight backpacking through hiking.
it's Ray Jardine.
Ray. I have to have heard of that guy before, but it didn't sound familiar at first. But I'm gonna check him out after we get off today.
Yeah.
Uh, cool. Well, another kind of just fun topic I wanted to talk to you about is your tandem bike. I absolutely love tandem riding. It's sometimes hard to find people to ride with, but my girlfriend and I just went on our first tandem ride, and she liked it. And then
Yeah.
we went on a regular ride, on our individual bikes, and on that ride, she's like, "Yeah, I think I like tandem riding." So I think we're gonna keep giving it a shot. But I absolutely love tandem riding, and I know you said that when you were looking at getting a tandem, you were hearing all of the horror stories and all of the reasons not to get a tandem. So I thought it could be fun to shifts the tide a little bit and maybe talk about some of the great things about tandem riding, some of the things that you like about it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, I'm super stoked that you guys are into it. It's pretty fun. Um, yeah, I think for like on the bike ease is there's like a couple things that are way easier on the tandem. The biggest one just being talking is like you're
Yeah.
never yelling across the wind. So that's really nice, especially for us on the tour. It's great because like yeah, all those decisions that you have to make throughout the day, you're just able to like be right there and talk and you don't have to stop or um and for touring specifically, there's some like benefits is you're never getting separated or lost from one another.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit of a harder bike to steal. Which
Never thought of that. That's so true.
yeah. And then for us, like in the tour that we did, it was a really great icebreaker and like situation de-escalator is, you know, sometimes we're going to these places and it's like you're just a stranger here. And then you ride by and people would just literally like start laughing when they saw us. And I don't know, that's definitely an easier way to come into like a totally foreign situation than to be like taking yourself super seriously is to just have people already laughing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that always when you're on the tandem, right? Like even if you go on tandem rides around town, you're like getting thumbs up and
Absolutely.
people are cheering. And so I think the positivity that comes with it is pretty great. And then pacing is not an issue either. Like, you know, I mean, you know how it is on the tandem. If one person isn't trying, like it's harder to ride the bike, but it's not like if somebody's having a bad day, you're not like, oh, constantly trying to slow down or trying to keep up. Like in a sense you are because you're always trying to like pedal at the same cadence, but it's way easier to pedal at the same cadence when you're attached than like when you're on separate bikes and it's like, oh, you keep getting these gaps and it's kind of challenging to you know, keep the group dynamics in sync versus on the tandem that's like just one less piece of the puzzle that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's a weird thing to do. Like
Yeah, it's a weird thing to do, but in a good
Yeah.
way. It's just
Yeah.
fun. It's kind of quirky. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? I don't even know exactly what it is that I like about tandem riding. I think it's just fun. I think it's just kind of
Yeah.
a unique and fun way to go on a bike ride. You know, it's a little bit more dynamic. It's different than what, I've been riding bikes since I was 4 years old. So, it's just a fun way to mix it up. I really relate to what you said about like, the interactions you get from people when they see the tandem. And I think that is part of the fun is people often do a double take.
Yeah.
I have two daughters. And so my oldest daughter can ride on the back of the tandem. And then we have a little bike that we attach to the seat post of the Stoker, the Stoker seat post. And then my youngest daughter will ride on the back bike there. So we have three of us that
That's epic.
and I try to get them out on just neighborhood rides almost every evening or, a few times a week, just cruising through the neighborhood. And it's a crowd stopper, man. People cannot help but like stop, point, smile, whatever. And I love that. I think we're kind of, I don't know, if I just went on a walk around my neighborhood, just people would ignore you completely and not even tune in. But it's a great way to just bring those walls down, and it's just fun. It's just fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love it. The first tandem ride I ever went on, it was actually a bikepacking trip that I was leading through Bikes for Death, and there was two guys that were on a tandem, and the stoker on this tandem, he got to camp, and I think he had some physical problem. I don't even know exactly what happened, but he called it and went home. Well, my friend was it's captain and stoker, right? Is that what
that's what people say. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was gonna just like ride the bike all the way back home, which was like 70 miles. And I was like, screw that, I'll hop on the back. And I gave my bike we had a SAG vehicle, and so I threw my bike in the back of that and just hopped on the back of it. That was my first time ever hopping on a tandem, and I did half of a bike packing trip, did 70 miles. It was great. I was like back there like doing stuff for Instagram and just like chilling. And I mean, I was pedaling, but like
Yeah.
you don't have to be as mentally engaged on the back as you do like in the front. When you're on the back, it's like you're like having a vacation back there. You get to enjoy the scenery like 100%. Like it's great.
Yeah, you get to see way more, and then it can go either way too, because then you can also just like put your head down and like mash on the pedals too. Is like, since you don't have to worry about like being as like dialed in on the road, is you
Yeah.
can just like pedal as pretty much like hard as you want. It's like being on a stationary. I mean, not quite,
Yeah.
but
Well, yeah, you can turn that side of your brain off and just focus on pedaling. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I love that. Well, I have to talk to you about your tour that you did on the tandem. I could spend an entire episode just on this one topic, but we do have to talk about the Colorado Trail at some point. But tell us about like what was this trip that you and Mark did on the tandem? What was it?
Yeah, so we rode from my parents' house in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to Bariloche, Argentina. So through all of Mexico and Central America, and then most of South America.
Yeah.
And yeah, it ended up being our honeymoon. We got married in September, and then we left like 10 days after on this trip. We had been planning it for quite a while, actually. Mark kind of came up with the idea, or like the idea that we should do this when I was on the CDT. I hiked that solo, and I think while I was out there, he actually started plotting a couple different trips that we ended up executing in the next couple of years together.
Awesome.
But we had initially kind of planned, like when I got done with the CDT, we thought that this tour was going to be next. We thought that that was kind of the next thing that we were going to do. And then, a series of things happened where it just wasn't possible to leave for that long. And finally, kind of things came together. We had decided to get married the year before. And it was like, we were like, oh, we're going to be able to get married and then go on this trip. And have that as kind of like our honeymoon.
Best honeymoon ever. I love that. I mean, so cool. How I mean, I know y'all were out there for like 7.5 months, so
Yeah.
I mean, big question, but like how was that experience on your honeymoon, newlyweds, on your tandem bike for 7.5 months? How did it go?
It was incredible. You know, like, yeah, I mean, we just haven't gotten tired of spending time with each other. So it's just so much fun to be out there together. And you know how it is. I'm like these adventures can be like really challenging, but they're never as hard as like things in the rest of your life.
So
Um,
true. Yeah.
and so like there were challenging moments for sure, but compared to like some of the um other things that like everybody deals with in their day-to-day lives outside of these trips, is it's like you're still on vacation
Yeah.
for all intents
Right.
and purposes. And so we felt just super lucky to be able to be out there and have that experience. I think as far as like the trip itself is like we had never left the country before this. And so there's definitely some like just the first day, just like riding over the border, we were like, oh man, this is just that itself was a really new experience for us. And then we've been trying to learn Spanish, so it was really cool. Like we took a couple weeks of Spanish courses in Mexico, and like we had studied before then, and so being able to practice our Spanish was a really fun part of the trip for us.
Yeah.
And then it's just so much fun to just be able to be on the bike every single day. That's like, yeah, I mean, through travel is just so cool for so many reasons, but definitely for us, one of the best parts is just being able to ride every single day.
Yeah. Man, what an adventure. First time out of the country too, man. That is so cool. You mentioned the tandem as being a good de-escalator. Did you find yourself in situations that needed to be de-escalated?
We didn't have like any major run-ins or like big safety concerns beyond just like the normal ones of traveling and being on the bike. But you go through areas like it would be like I'm sure people experience all this like all the time just on any tour is you like ride through areas that it's like okay, you don't feel the most comfortable here or like people have told you that it's more dangerous there. Um and so we didn't have like anything where I felt like we were like obviously in harm's way, but it's like um you try to trust your instincts, and if something feels unsafe you try to like take extra precautions to keep yourself safe. And so was there like a specific situation? No, but was there like areas where we rode through where we were thankful to like be together all the time and be kind of like just disarming figures? Like definitely.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. Go ahead.
um I was just gonna say that most of the concern for like through traveling for like whether you're doing it on bike or by bus or on foot is just petty theft, right? Like
Yeah.
you hear stories all the time, and we heard first and second hands accounts of other cyclists getting robbed, and almost every single cyclist that we heard about getting robbed, actually I think everyone, was a solo male.
Mm.
Um, is like I think that's probably just the kind of like quote unquote easiest target. And so we were thankful just to like have um the companionship of being with another person. And then I think being a woman, there's maybe a little like culturally it's just not as maybe like honorable,
Mm.
for lack of a better word, to rob a woman.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's true, but we never got robbed, so
It makes sense. It makes sense. I don't know if it's true either, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. What was your, you how many miles did y'all ride? I don't know how many miles that is. I know it's like
ooh,
18,000 from Alaska down to the tip of Argentina. I think that's right. Do you know how many miles
yeah.
your trip was?
I think we did 11,000.
Wow. So lots to choose from, but was
Yeah.
there any particular region or country or area that really like stood out to you as being like the highlight of the trip for you?
Yeah, definitely Peru.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
the mountains in Peru are just so incredible. Like, um, we neither Mark nor I are really ocean people, so kind of once we had the opportunity to leave the coast, we spent as little time there as possible. And then like when we got to the mountains of Peru, it was just like yeah, some of the most incredible places that I've ever been. Is like every day, if we wanted to in Peru, we could ride 10,000 feet a day every single day, in less than 100 miles. And
Wow.
like, one day we rode on a paved road up to above 15,000 feet.
Whoa.
Yeah, just like, and that was,
Talk about altitude sickness.
oh
Jesus.
man, yeah, it was crazy. Like when we were in kind of central Peru all the way through Bolivia, we were sleeping well above 10,000 feet, and most nights above 12,000 feet for
Wow.
like, I don't know, it was like 2.5 weeks or something.
Wow. That's amazing. That's incredible. Uh, like I said, I could ask a million questions, but I do want to get to the Colorado Trail. I have one more about this tour, though, and that's about how it ended. I think if I read it correctly, at the end of this trip, you gave your tandem bike away.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, we went in ready to do that.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how many tandems you own.
Only
Or
one.
okay, yeah, so I don't know if you've spent much time looking at the tandem market, but we bought our bike. We bought it for I think $500 off of Craigslist, and then, obviously we bought new saddles and handlebars, and a new wheel for it. So, we put more money than that into it, but the cost to ship it back would have been more than like the initial cost. And we have another tandem that again we bought for $500 off of Craigslist. Is that for us it was just like that was the way that it made the most sense. And like that bike was smoked by the time we were done. Like it was when we were giving it to the guy. So we were in a pretty like a really affluent area of Argentina, and like we're going around all these bike shops that like sell like $10,000 mountain bikes, and we're like, "Do you guys want this tandem?" And they were like, "No." But we finally found a guy who was like, stoked on it, and he wanted it. And we were like going through the list of everything that was wrong with it. And it was just such a funny conversation because, we're like, okay, the rear wheel, like you really need to replace the rear wheel. Like it's so close to being done. Like we had rim brakes, and so the walls, we had cracked our front rim the week prior and had to build a new wheel. And then the rear wheel is just a little harder to build for like a variety of reasons. And so we were just like really crossing our fingers, but you could just see the walls of the rim were so thin in the middle where it had gotten like really worn down from the braking. And like, we had a pedal that was like, one of Mark's pedals was just seized on to the crank. Like you just can't, if you don't want SPD clipless like pedals on there, you're like gonna have to get like a whole new tandem specific cranksets, because you can't just swap out cranksets on tandem on the captain position on tandem, because the drive because the synchro rings are on the opposite side. So it's like you have to get custom tandem cranksets for it. And the stem was like, we had to do a stem conversion to get the handlebars that we wanted on there. And so it was like, we had sawed off the like steer tube where the like old stem was welded onto it, and like had a couple of adapters on there. And so it was just kind of wrong from the start. There was no like catastrophic rust on it, but like a lot of the paint had gotten kind of polished off from all of our bags. Like the drivetrain was all ready to be replaced. And so we're telling this guy all this stuff, and his like mannerism of speech was like, instead of saying like, okay, or gotcha, is like kind of to respond to anything. He said like, perfect. So like, we're speaking in Spanish, but everything he's like, perfecto, perfecto, sí, perfecto. And it's like, this bike is just like, it's a mess.
Oh, that is so funny. Was it hard to let that bike go though? I mean, yeah, you have created so many memories on it and everything. Was it hard to let it go?
I think letting the physical bike go was not super hard. I struggle with the end of trips, so it was very hard for me to let go of the trip, to really like give away the bike and admit that it was over.
Yeah.
But I think like the physical bike we were not too sentimental about.
Yeah. No, that's true. The post-trip blues are a real thing. The real world comes crashing down hard and fast, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the Colorado Trail. You won it. You are the winner. Congratulations. That's amazing. With a really fast time. I don't think we mentioned your time yet. So 5 days, 12 hours, 21 minutes, which is that's a fast time. This was your first time racing Colorado Trail, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And was this your first bikepacking race ever?
My first bikepacking race, yeah. Wow.
Incredible. So you actually have a pretty long history with the Colorado Trail. You've thru-hiked it, you've skied it, and you've I don't know if we want to call it bikepack touring, because in 2023 I saw you did it, I think, in 11 days. And then so in 2024 you came back and you raced it. Do you think that you're the only person in the world to have done all three of these disciplines on the Colorado Trail?
Yeah, well, as far as we know, Mark and I are the only people to have ever skied it.
Oh, wow.
I guess we're pretty confident that that's true at this point. So yes, the only person to have done all three as well.
Yeah, so you've invented, I should have thought about this before we hopped on, but like a triple crown on the Colorado Trail, a triple crown of like multi-disciplines instead of three different trails. That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm gonna bust out the rollerblades next.
Please tell me. Yeah, what other ways are left to do it? Are you scheming up any other fun ways? I'm assuming you're kidding about the rollerblades, although I think that would be absolutely epic.
Yeah, no, as far as I can tell, those are the three most effective ways to travel on the Colorado Trail.
Yeah,
Although,
there's
yeah, I'm sure somebody's gonna come by and prove me wrong.
yeah. Oh man, that's incredible. So I mean, uh you have a pretty like high degree of comfortability and familiarity with the Colorado Trail going into this year's race. What what made you decide that you wanted to race it? Not just it, but race bike pack racing in general. Like what about that? It's like, yeah, I want to give that a shot.
Yeah, this is definitely kind of one of those things like we were talking about at the beginning is like getting into outdoor rec is a big part of it is just knowing that it's possible. And so, uh, you know, I heard about the Colorado Trail Race through Mark. Kind of when I first started mountain biking, he had a friend who had done it, and like, it's like this crazy ride, this crazy race that you could do. And so I think just knowing that it was a possibility from kind of the onset of my mountain biking was a big part of it. And then, um, when Alexandra Huchin
I
started
think she pronounces it Houchin. She's
Houchin.
come on the episode or the podcast before, and I'm if I
Okay,
remember correctly, Houchin. I
Houchin.
hope I got that
Yeah.
right, Alexandra.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad. But when she started like, kind of breaking her own records and setting these like faster women's times on the single speed, um, Mark mentioned that to me, and I remember reading about her and thinking that that was just the coolest thing ever. And you know, I think racing seemed really far off for me for a long time. It seemed like something that would be really challenging, and it is. And so I kind of like was really enjoying mountain biking and always kept that in the back of my mind as like, oh man, that'd be cool if like someday I could do that. And then really like when I just toured the trail, like just bike packed last year, it was like with the mindset that this was kind of like preparation for the Colorado Trail races. I guess it was kind
Uh,
of to see if I could do it just as a tour, and then see if it was like a possibility to race.
yeah. Do you consider yourself to be a competitive person? Like when you're thinking about signing up for Colorado Trail Race and signing up, were you aiming to, win? Was that part of your goal? How do you consider yourself when you're like thinking about actually racing the Colorado Trail?
Yeah, I do consider myself to be a competitive person. I think the thing that I value most about competition is like the competitive environment and the competitive spirit is like there's just so much I think to be gained from being in that mindset and in that environment. And for me, part of being in that mindset and environment is like going out and trying to win. So like um this year my goal was to win the women's field.
Oh, wow. Did you have a time goal on top of that? Like, yeah, did you do the math and figure out where you thought you'd be able to end? And then also like you toured it, so you kind of have that perspective as well.
Yeah, um I think I had a couple kind of different goals, kind of some more reachy ones and then some more like, okay, where I really thought I could be. I really thought, like, I was like, I think I can definitely finish in under 7 days. And then when I kind of like went through and looked at kind of where it made sense to camp and resupply, I was like, I think I could do that in around six. I think I could do it in under 6 days. Um, Kind of like looking at the map. And then the night before the race, I there's like a trail angel in Denver who hosts like Colorado trail racers. Um, and like last minute, I ended up like meeting another rider, and he was staying there, and so then I ended up staying there, and then this woman Emma, who is from New Zealand, who is racing this year, she just happened to be staying there, and I was like, what's your goal? And she was like, I'm gonna try to go under 5. Like she was like, if everything goes right, I'm gonna try to go under 5. So then
Wow.
that night I was up at 11 p.m. scheming about how to go under 5, like, um, or like how to race against her. And so I don't think she didn't have the race that she planned. Like I think the altitude really affected her.
Um,
This was her first time in the US, and she spent some time acclimatizing, but you know how it is. It's like there's just only so much you can do, and like yeah, having it be your first time. First, it was her first time on the CT, her first time in the US. Like there's just so much that I think like
yeah.
was like really challenging. So it wasn't like the perfect race for her. Like obviously she did not go under 5, but having having her like say that and be out there like racing against her, as I was definitely like that was in the back of my mind, but obviously we
Yeah.
were ways off from that.
It lit your fire.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, with your high level of comfortability and familiarity with the Colorado Trail, was there anything like that gave you trepidation when you thought about racing it? Anything like keep you up at night?
Yeah, like I mean there was a lot that I was nervous about, and like um there's a couple sections of trail that are particularly challenging. The one that I was always like, man, what is this going to feel like on race day is there's a stretch in between Spring Creek Pass and Silver and Stony Pass, and in between Silverton, where you're just like, you're up above 12,000 feet for like almost 30 miles. Um, and it's not like it's like fairly rideable, but it's just you're at such high elevation that it's like just the steep, like a little steep punch. No matter how long it is, it's just so hard, and so it's like a really slow stretch. And I think that one during the race actually, like I just committed for that whole stretch. I wasn't looking at my clock. I wasn't looking at like how many miles, like how fast I was moving, and I was like, I'm just gonna try to keep moving. And that strategy worked really well for me. Um, and then I think the other stretch going into it, that was like maybe as hard as I expected it to be, was like Sargent's Mesa to Highway 114. There's just all these like puds, like these ups and downs, and super rocky. And I was definitely struggling there during the race. That was like a pretty slow stretch for me. I was lucky though, because the people just maybe like 25 to like 50 miles ahead of me got caught in this huge hailstorm. And I got
Or
there the next morning, and it was like I came over this ridge, and I had like been basically dry the night before. And there were these like 6-inch hail drifts in the middle of the trail, and I was like, what happened here? This is like, and then after the race I saw like videos on Facebook of riders who were like caught in that downpour. Like the front riders were all caught in
yeah.
that.
Usanis was in it. I know. I talked to him. I saw his videos on. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it looked gnarly. Looked real
Yeah.
gnarly. Yeah, so you avoided that one.
Yeah, I got really lucky with the weather.
Yeah. I always think it's interesting the transition from like preparation into race mode, right? Like you toured it a year before and doing a lot of like just, physical work, planning, mental work, and then like the morning comes, it's like, okay, we're here and we're not sleeping, we're going hard for 5, 6, 7 days. Do you do any like mental work or anything to like kind of get your mind into that race mode?
um I think that that's actually an area where I really need to improve. Is the 2 days before the race, I spent a lot of time just like running around like a chicken with my head cut off. It's like I kind of had the whole summer. I knew that I was going to be off work the week before, which was like really great. I was like, oh, gonna have all this time to prepare, and gonna be so on top of it, gonna get to Denver early, gonna like, get a full night's sleep. And it's like all that's out the window. Is like the day before I was leaving town, I was like, oh, I need to replace my bottom bracket right now. And um like, last minute bottom bracket swap, and which like, isn't a big deal, but it all feels like a big deal when you feel like you've like created this like arbitrary schedule for yourself.
Yeah.
And then just like getting to Denver was way different than I expected, and like last minute like food shopping. And um so I think as far as like the mindset for racing for me is that it's like once I'm there, there's like no reason not to try as hard as you can, is kind of like the biggest switch that I try to turn, is that like, okay, no matter kind of like where I was at the day before, how the like preparation went up to this point, or like how well you slept, the day before this race that you're planning on like sleeping as little as possible, is that like you're there and you're like there to try as hard as you can. And for me, it's a lot easier to make that switch when you're like, I don't know, rolling out at 4 a.m. with all the other like kooks
Yeah.
with their like headlights and everybody's out there excited. And so like kind of like setting that mindset with like the other racers that first day was like kind of the big mindset shift for me, is that like, okay, you're there and you're racing.
Yeah. Yeah. If you didn't know yet, 4 a.m. with all the other racers, you're gonna know that you're racing.
Yeah.
Find out real fast. How did the beginning of the race go? You got and maintained a lead pretty early on, it seems like, from track leaders, and kept that lead all the way to the end. So how did the beginning of the race go? How were you feeling out of the gate?
Yeah, I think like feeling day one was not my best actually, but I think, kind of looking back at the numbers, and it's like, okay, what does it really matter how you feel if you're like, obviously, like you said, I was able to keep and maintain that lead. So I think like the kind of the end result at day one was way better than I expected. I like yeah, had a really good day results wise, and being out there with the other riders was so much fun. Like it's so cool. Like day one, you're leapfrogging with all these people, and like everybody's out there. You see a lot more people, going this direction. There's a big road detour day one, and so you spend like just on roads. It's a lot easier to kind of like, see the rider up the other riders up the hill, or like you're like chatting with people, or they're like yelling at you when you take the wrong turn. And so like that environment was just super fun to be in. But I was definitely like physically right off the bat, I was not feeling very good. I like had spent a lot more time in the car the 2 days prior, and I'd gone kayaking at the beginning of the week, after not being in the boat for a while, and it had just like wrecked my hips and lower back. Like I started taking ibuprofen at like 7 a.m. on day one, and I was like, oh no, this is rough. But I was just having like really bad aches, which thankfully actually I like rode out of, is like that stuff actually like loosened up. And by the end of day one was feeling way better. But like beginning of the day one and the middle of the day, like I remember being at mile 50, like being at mile 50 and being like, okay, this is like 10% of the distance. And being like, wow, this is really hard.
Yeah. Don't think about that too much.
Yeah. And then I think where things really started to kind of like, I got over the hill of like, just kind of the discomfort that I'd come in with, and was like, oh man, we're like out here doing this, was going up Georgia Pass at night. This other rider who's like a pretty strong rider, but he'd had like a little bit of a mechanical, he like caught up to me, and while I was there just, kind of like, I don't know, messing around with something, like whatever you're doing with your bike lights or whatever, any excuse to stop. And he like caught up with me, and he was kind of having a rough moment, I think, before he caught me, and we were able to just like ride together and like push up Georgia Pass, and yeah, push like up and over. And it was like, oh, like we're, out here, and it's 9 p.m. and we're at the top of this like first mountain pass, and we're like doing it. And that was kind of when it felt like possible. I guess the whole race started to feel possible, was just like being up there. And then I was able to put some distance on the other women, which the first day it was hard for me to tell where the other women were. I wasn't checking track leaders, and I thought there was a possibility that they were still in front of me, because just like at the kind of in the rollout, it's like dark, it's hard to tell where everybody is. And so I was still kind of in
oh, that's such a good point. I hadn't thought about that before, that it's dark when you're rolling out, so you can't yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah. So I was definitely kind of there still in the chasing mindset. And then the next morning, when I rolled through like Breckenridge basically, and I like looked online and saw that or at that time only Emma's tracker was working, like Karen who got second. Her tracker just wasn't working very well that first time, but I saw that Emma had slept way less than I did and that like I had a lead on her and now she was super close to me. And then for the rest of the race, that was kind of like the fire that was burning, was that like being chased mentality.
Yeah. It's really interesting having never raced before. I'm kind of curious if you had other experiences that would let you know how your body was going to perform in a race environment with like, how did you decide how much you were going to sleep and how many miles you were going to go? Like, did you have question marks about how your body was going to respond with little sleep and big efforts?
Yeah, there were a lot of question marks for me. I think that was the other big goal that I had going into this year, was to really like make an assessment of what was possible for myself, because I didn't really know. You know, having toured and like through traveled, is I had the confidence that it's like, okay, I can keep going day after day, at some level.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did not know what that level was. I'm usually a big sleeper, and I still slept more than some of the like competitors around me. Um, and so that I knew was going to be very challenging for me. But I think like my confidence was really just in that, like, okay, I could keep moving it at some pace, what like on whatever day. And so just keep like trying to push that pace and trust that, okay, even if I'm moving slow tomorrow, I'll still be able to move.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Did you have a planned strategy whenever it came to sleep going in? Like, I'm going to sleep from this time to this time, X number of hours every single night. Like, how did you approach the sleep aspect of it?
Yeah, I kind of had a general idea, but I knew that I wanted to um like basically stay up as late as I could and then sleep until like an hour or two before sunrise. Is like the mornings are challenging for me. That's usually when I move the slowest. That's when I'm
Sure.
like stopping the most. Is it's
Right.
like, there's a little bit more stuff to manage, whether it's like layers or like having to poop or like, dealing with your light or like whatever it is. And so I was like, okay, get like some of that slow movement out of the way while it's still dark, but not have be like, for me, it's a challenge if you're like waking up and like starting something at, 1 a.m., that you have 5 hours of dark before you get to see the sun. And so having kind of a smaller window in the morning to get to that sunlight. And then like at night, most nights on trail, like I got to a point where it was like, okay, it just doesn't really make sense for me to be moving anymore.
Mm.
And that was kind of the
Mhm.
mindset I went in with, is like, okay, I'm gonna move, like keep moving through the night as long as it makes sense. But it's like if I'm walking down something that I could ride during the day, that's like, something long, like it's like, okay, I should probably stop. Or it's like if I could be, if I'm just like not, if I'm stopping too much or like not really like in it, then it's like, okay, that's where I'm going to stop. And so that was kind of the plan, and it roughly worked out like that as far as sleep went. And then I guess, yeah, I was hoping to get 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah. So stopping for safety reasons, or like when you were making the decision to stop, was it like, okay, this is getting unsafe, or okay, this is just kind of like wasted miles. Like, I'm moving so slow, it makes more sense to sleep, reset, and charge, with a little bit of sleep under your belt.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the latter is like, there were not a lot of times where I felt like my sleep deprivation was getting to the point of like unsafe.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there are definitely nights where I was riding sloppier, but I just would go slower. And it's like, if you take kind of like a dumb crash and you're only going like, I don't know, 10 miles an hour, and like, or you're not in like super technical terrain, it's like just not not as big of a deal. It was more that like, okay, I think I'm just going to be maximizing efficiency if I sleep for a couple hours here.
Yeah. So what did you learn about yourself? First time racing and you were pushing your body physically, mentally, probably in different ways than you have before. Like, did you get the right amount of sleep? Did you think you could cut back on the sleep? What did you learn about yourself? Because you said that this was kind of like an assessment. You were taking an assessment of yourself. So what is your assessment now after it's done?
Yeah, it was confidence inspiring to be able to come in kind of under or like in a faster time than I had expected. So there's definitely some confidence building, boosting in my abilities. I think the sleep is a tough one because like yeah, definitely I should have been sleeping less. I like, there's like we just had this whole conversation about efficiency, but there's just no making up for time on the bike is like
Yeah.
So I think yeah that I could do it on that much sleep. I think I could do it on less, hopefully. But that was just the biggest thing is that it like was possible to ride that trail that fast for me was pretty big. And then I had a couple like moments where I felt like I was like, oh, I'm really a mountain biker. Now is like this has been kind of for a long time a sport that I just did by myself. It's like one of the things I love about mountain biking is that you can just go out by yourself after work and like have your little cruise. And I had really done almost all of my riding just by myself or with Mark. But when we were living in different places, like my daily riding was just all by myself. And like there were a couple moments during this race where I was just like riding with other people. And it was like one of the first times where I had met strangers and been like, I wasn't worried about like keeping up because I was like racing. I was just going my own pace, right? But it was like uh we were just riding together and we were like ripping really fun descents or like charging up climbs or like, pushing our bikes through techie bits. And I think one of the best parts about racing for me is that like you just get to let go of all of the kind of like social stress because you're like, no, I have a goal. I'm out here like trying to do this as fast as I can and like doesn't really matter what it looks like. And so I think for me one of the like biggest realizations in just being on trail during this race was like that I'm a part of the mountain bike community too. I'm not just like somebody who goes on, I mean, like beyond just going on mountain bike rides, I feel like I'm a mountain biker.
Yeah, I love that. Welcome to mountain biking. It's nice to have you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Did anything surprise you about this year's race? I mean, again, you are very familiar with the course. Did you have any experiences that, I don't know, surprised you that you weren't expecting?
I feel like I got so lucky with the weather. It almost feels like cheating. Because I really only got rained on. Like, there were some sprinklings here and there, but I really only got rained on, like where it was like, okay, the trail is like wet and we're getting muddy. Once in like 5.5 days on the CT, it was like crazy. And then
that is crazy.
Yeah, day one is like can be really hot. Like when I just bike packed it, I like gave myself heat exhaustion on that stretch. And it was like for the race, it was this like perfect day, overcast, not raining, but not too hot. And so that really surprised me. I was definitely kind of buckled in for some more thunderstorms. Like, and again, I just happened to be in this like good weather window. And so that was surprising. And then two, like that went hand in hand with that was like I didn't get rained on very much, but it had been raining, so the trail was riding so well. Like there were just some sections that were just so much fun that like that I've ridden in the past that were in 4 conditions that were like more challenging, and then there were some descents where it was like, just like hero dirt, like wheels like velcroed to the trail and you could just kind of like rip through. And so yeah, I think that was a little bit of a surprise, is just to still be like getting to enjoy just like, I don't know, some of the most incredible trails.
Yeah, you probably mentally prepared yourself for it to be like up here hard, and then like you're out there and you're like, man, the weather's not that bad, the trails are perfect. Like I thought this was supposed to be hard.
Yeah. Like I said,
And I don't mean to downplay. I know that what you did was hard, by the way. I'm not
No,
downplaying
you're
it, but
good.
it's in terms of like your expectation, you're probably just like, whoa, this is fun.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, compared to like some of the past years, like some of the conditions the riders have had to deal with, like it felt like cheating. I was like, this is not the same experience as what like they've seen when it's like raining every single day and they're like slogging through mud or hail, or like it's like super dry and really dusty and really
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I'm curious to get your opinion. What is your favorite section or part of the Colorado Trail? I've never done it, by the way. So if I go and ride the Colorado Trail, what should I put on my POI as a place to look forward to?
Man, there's a couple stretches that I really like. Um, the last descent, or like the last 18 or 20 miles, like from the top of Kennebec Pass all the way down to Durango, including like the last, like, there's like this last 2,000-foot climb kind of in the middle of this long descent, is really cool, really fun riding. I love the riding style on pretty much the whole CT. Like the high country riding in Colorado is just like so cool. Um, so I love the stretch between Copper and Leadville, basically, is like going up, you go up over Cyril and Kokomo, and you're like up high and you have these really beautiful views. And then there's just this like super fast descent down to Camp Hale. Um, but I like really like that area of Colorado. It's definitely like living in Leadville, spending time there, like anytime I've done the CT, whether it's skiing or hiking, that stretch has just always like stood out to me as being especially beautiful. And then we actually got married at a campground in Camp Hale. So
Oh,
like the bottom of that descent, basically like, yeah, not too far off from the CT there. So it's like, yeah, like I said, it's like a
it's
little
a special
sentimental, but
place for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just think it's such a cool area, too. And it's just like, it's not like the craziest riding or anything, but yeah, you're just like up high with these really cool views, and then you just get this like great descent, and then you're still at 10,000 feet. So
All right. I'll put it on my POI for when I go out there.
yeah.
You you mentioned Leadville, and I wanted to ask you about your resupplies because looking at track leaders, it doesn't look like you resupplied in Leadville. And in fact, the only place I could tell that you resupplied was maybe in Buena Vista. But I was curious about your resupplies. Where did you? Yeah, what were they actually?
So I stopped a little bit more than I expected. So like full resupply, like, grocery store resupply, like yeah, Buena Vista and then Silverton, or I guess the two like where I was like, okay, like actually buying like granola bars and stuff or whatever to fill up my bag. But I carried a little bit, or I just carried way too much food from the start because like I said, I really wasn't sure how those first 2 days were gonna go. I was a little worried I'd get to Copper and or Leadville when stuff was closed. So I wanted to be able to make it to Buena Vista if I needed to. Um, and so I carried like enough food to get there. But I did end up, there's like a little restaurant on day one that a lot of people stopped at, and I ended up stopping there for some chips and soda. And then I ended up stopping, like, there's a detour in Copper this year. So you go right by the Copper gas station. And so I got a sandwich there. And then in Leadville, I actually spent more time in Leadville than I would have liked. It's funny that it like doesn't really show up because in your head you're like, I spent way too much time there.
Yeah, well, you know how like track leaders it'll do that weird thing where like it kind of pauses and then like it'll take off. Like I think
Yeah.
where you didn't ping for a little while. So I think you had one of those around Leadville, and I couldn't really
Okay.
tell what actually happened. So I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so I like stopped in Leadville and just got some like potato wedges from the grocery store. And then I was kind of debating like, I was like looking at my map and like just deciding whether I was going to make it to BV the next day when stuff was open or if I was going to ride through before then. And there's another rider there and I was like wrapped in indecision about whether like I should carry more food from Leadville or like, and in reality, I was just being paranoid because then once I like started riding and was like doing the math again, I was like, wait, yeah, I'm definitely going to be in BV when stuff is open. I'm like, not going to ride that fast. And then, yeah, in Buena Vista, I did like a full resupply there. I actually like got a breakfast burrito there too. And then spent some time there like freaking out about what to do because I dropped my light
Oh,
riding in. Like I'd stowed it after like the sun came up and then I must have just like came out of my frame bag when I was pulling out my jacket and another rider actually picked it up and turned it into a local business, so I'm gonna be able to get it back. But I
oh,
carried
nice.
a backup light, but it was just like a headlamp. And it's a pretty powerful headlamp and it's rechargeable, but I was like not sure if that would be enough. And I was like, should I wait around for the gear store to open and try to buy another light or have like another backup? And just kind of did a lot of anxious decision making there before I headed out. So I ended up spending a little bit more time there than I would have expected. And then, yeah, I stopped in Silverton for my last resupply.
No. So I'm curious how you kind of managed being at the head of the race for so long. Like, I think some people like to be chased and some people like to be the chaser. This being your first bikepacking race, I guess you haven't had the opportunity to be in both positions. But yeah, how did you find that? Was it like, were you just always feeling on the edge and like, oh, I got to go, 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 go? Like, was it, I don't know, a lot of pressure, or did you just enjoy like kind of setting the pace for the race?
No, I definitely felt, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I definitely felt like I was under pressure the whole time. I did not feel like I was setting the pace. I felt like I was like, yeah, being chased. Um, Especially because like most like Karen, who is the second place woman, she was usually up before me and like moving before I had even gotten out of my sleep. Like on the nights or on the days when I camped in service, like I would check track leaders when I woke up and she would already be moving. And so there's definitely yeah, a feeling of being pursued, which I think for a race, like I can't, like you said, I can't say whether it's like better or worse for me. I think like, you know, I was I was like racing the women's field. Like that was, I guess like my goal was to win the women's field, but I was still like racing, trying to race everybody who was out there. Um, and so I was like around other riders who were at a fairly similar pace, and so like leapfrogging with them. I feel like there's like riders out there to chase still.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's still people to, yeah, carrots to chase and people you can see coming up the trail behind you. And I noticed that when I was watching on track leaders, like there was a lot of leapfrogging. There was a lot of other riders around your same pace. And so it didn't look like you were out there alone,
Hmm.
very much. Certainly you're riding alone, but sometimes on these races you can find yourself in a pocket and just like feel like you're completely isolated and you're doing your own thing, but it seemed like you had some company from time to time, which is nice.
Yeah, I was definitely thankful for that.
How did you celebrate?
Um, well, like Alexandra was at the trailhead for my finish, which was like super cool. Mark, my husband, was there too, and like some of the other riders were there. So just the like in the moment celebration was like, or the at the finish celebration was really incredible. Like I've looked up to Alexandra for a long time and read a lot of her stuff preparing for this, and to have her there and like to get to talk to her and like yeah make her acquaintance was really cool. And then
So you didn't know she was going to be there? That was a total surprise.
yeah, no, that was a surprise to me.
Legend. Yeah, that's so
um
cool.
Yeah, and I knew Mark was gonna be there, which was like, oh, I was so thankful. Like, he texted me the night before and he's like, I'll be there at the finish, and I was like so excited to know that he was there. And yeah, I got to like eat some eat some food there and just be there with like the other racers sitting in the shade. Kind of the two other racers who they just like smoked me the last day. But we had been kind of leapfrogging the whole way. These two guys who got like seventh and eighth, or like sixth and seventh. They were there hanging out, and so like we just spent a couple hours at the trailhead, and then by the time like we were ready to leave there, I was like just ready to go to bed. We like kind of talked about maybe hanging out a little bit more, and I was like, actually, I've reached my social cap. I like have to go to sleep very soon, or I'll just start crying. So,
Uh,
um, and then my parents bought us a hotel room, which was really really sweet. So, I
I've asked that question a lot over the years of doing this podcast, and I think that's one of the best answers. How did you celebrate? I slept, and
yeah
that was the most glorious thing ever. But really,
yeah
that's the things you're probably craving the most are a shower, food, and sleep. I think,
yeah
you're going to be choosing from one of those three, and it's just like, what order am I doing them in? But let's knock those out.
yeah exactly.
So you toured it in 2023 in 11 days, and then you raced it just now in 5.5 days. So exactly half the time you took to
Oh yeah.
tour it. What experience did you enjoy more?
Um, I mean, racing is just it's really fun. This is the like first time I've been like back in the competitive environment in quite a while. And yeah, I really missed it. So it's like, fun is kind of hard to quantify, right? Like touring is just it's so easy. It's such a good life. Like, you're out there and like you roll through Buena Vista, and there's no need to worry about like how long you're staying there. You can stop and like drink a smoothie and eat a bagel and call your mom. And like when you're racing, it's a totally different experience. But like uh I guess right now, like which would I go back to first is like racing for sure. Um really really is appealing to me right now, but fun seems like it might be the wrong word, but maybe not. I don't know. You're just out there with like other bikers, and you're still getting to ride the trail, and you get to push yourself self and try as hard as you can.
I think you get to use every word whenever it comes to bike pack racing. Fun, hard,
Yeah.
challenging, tears, highs, lows, yes and no's. It's like it really runs the gamut of every human emotion in a,
Yeah.
5 or 6 day period. So I think fun was, I'm sure, in there somewhere. Well, that's
Definitely.
exciting. I mean, yeah, I mean, just an incredible performance on your first ever bikepacking race, which is got to be such a cool feeling. And that's exciting to hear that you're thinking about, well, I guess that's my next question, but it's sounding like you're going to be doing some more races. So what are you thinking? Anything like on your radar that you might be wanting to tackle?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the only big race that I allotted time for this year. So, like definitely being at the finish, and like a lot of those guys are going out for the AZTR, and they're like, "You should come," and I was like, "Definitely." And then it's like, well, you look at the work schedule, and you're like, "Oh, maybe not." But and like a whole host of other reasons, I'm sure. But I think um right now it feels like it's all a possibility. It's like mm, there's a lot of unknowns for me right now. It's like okay, this is the first summer I've done any mountain bike racing, and like yeah, my first bike pack race, and like I kind of look at these other athletes that I really look up to, and you kind of look at they have like this resume that's like I mean the well-known athletes, like you're looking at years and years of this, and so it's um a little bit intimidating being on the front end of that, and like wow, you have this like whole world of possibilities, and like intimidating but like really exciting. So I I'd like to do it all. I mean,
Yeah.
I I can succumb to the kind of more is more attitude, um, which is not a very sustainable attitude in anything, right? But right now it feels that way. Is like it's like, oh, I'd like to do a lot more. Um, but I'm trying to be responsible to like myself and my relationships and the people around me. So I know that was a pretty long-winded and vague answer to say like we'll see as far as bike pack racing. But right now I'm really excited about some other races. We Are you familiar with the Colorado Endurance Series?
No, I know of it through your blog.
Okay.
I read that
Um,
you did. I think that was the first mountain bike race that you entered or something like that was through them.
Yeah, totally. So it's like, the Colorado Trail Race is a Colorado Endurance Series event. They're like that format that it's like a grassroots event. It's under that 74 limit for the Forest Service like land use permit. Like, if you're under 74 people, you don't need a permit for an
Yeah.
event. And so they just cap these at 74 people, and it's like capped at 74 people, but it's like you're lucky if you get 7 people out there.
Yeah.
But some of them are bigger, some of them are more popular. The Salida Big Freakin' Loop I did this year, and that one's a little more popular. There were like 40 or 50 people out for that one, but they're just free events that somebody makes a route, and a lot of them are established and been around for quite a while now. And there's a guy out there with a clipboard, and everybody signs in and then signs out at the end of it, and they're usually like pretty big rides, like over 100 miles or over 10,000 feet of climbing. And so I'm hoping to be able to squeeze a couple more of those into this fall schedule. And then we're actually hosting one here in Aspen. There used to be one like years and years ago, and it hasn't happened for a while. So we put it up on the on the website, and we're going to be out there riding the second week of September, the like big loop here in Aspen.
Oh, that's coming up.
Yeah.
So yeah, plug it for anybody who wants to learn more and maybe join you for that. Where can they go to find more information?
Yeah, so Colorado Endurance Series has its own website, so you can look that up. And our race is the Pain in the Aspen. Uh,
That's great.
yeah, and so if you have a sec, I'll just look up the actual
Oh yeah.
stats on it so that I don't make anything up. So it's 67 miles. It's 15,000 feet of climbing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it starts and ends in downtown Aspen. Um, and let me see, September 15th, which is a Sunday.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah. Everybody go and join Nicolette there in Colorado. Are you going to be racing it or just running it?
I'll be racing it.
Oh, hell yeah. Nice,
Yeah.
nice. By the way, I like the answer that you gave about future bike pack racing. I think that's a very honest answer. And I think the reality is that all of us, if we could, would say yes to everything. Say yes to
Yeah.
always living on your bike and traveling and doing cool shit all the time. But it's trying to find that, work-life balance, relationship life balance, adventuring, like all these things, and figuring out that conglomeration of life and how to make all those pieces fit. I think that's a very honest answer that I think most of us are always trying to figure out. It's like a moving target,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see you back out there. I've really enjoyed getting to chat with you, and like I completely binge read your blog, and like I was just really enamored and like blown away by all the cool stuff that you have done. Like you're a very adventurous person, and it's been fun getting a chance to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time and for making this podcast happen.
Absolutely. No, it's a lot of fun. I get to talk to really cool people doing really cool shit, and that's kind of cool. But yeah, absolutely congratulations on Colorado Trail Race. Like that is, mind blowing, just really impressive for a first race to go out there, lay down that time. I'm curious what you would do if you went back, because it sounds like you have a little bit of time you could shave potentially. So that could be interesting.
Yeah, that's the goal.
You're going to go back and try it again?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, Nicolette, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And yeah, maybe we'll get a chance to chat another time. I'd like to do a whole podcast. Maybe we'll get you and Mark to talk about your tandem tour or something. Like, there's so many more things that we could unpack that are truly exciting. But I guess we'll wrap this one up for now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks again for taking the time. And yeah, hopefully talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, Nicolette. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and tuning into today's episode. And a big thank you and congratulations goes out to Nicolette Jones. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your experience with us. And I'm really looking forward to watching your dot the next time you sign up for a race and just following along all your adventures on your blog. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to support the show, a great way to do that is by patroning our advertising partners that see value in this show and you as a listener. To find out more about our sponsors, head over to the show notes and maybe show our sponsors a little love. Thank you so much for being here. It is always a pleasure. Until next week, you know what to do. Go ride your damn bike.
It was the middle of the night. You grabbed your knife and you held it tight. The sounds of beasts kept you awake. The sounds they made kept you afraid. In the morning, you packed your bike. Memories forgotten from the previous night. You rode faster than ever before. Was it your imagination? Or merely folklore? Fear turned into strength as you pushed further. Every pedal stroke, stronger and firmer. Your bike feels weightless, your legs aren't tired. You think to yourself, just a few more miles. Bikes. Oh, death. Bikes. Oh, death.